4 stages of passive income. I've broken it down into a simple 4-letter acronym that's going to be really easy to remember. LIPS. Let's start with the first letter, L. L stands for learning. When we begin our passive income journey, we have so many opportunities that come our way. We see this shiny object and this shiny object, and this investment is so cool, but this one's doing 1,000% returns, but this one only requires $5,000 to get started. Maybe I should pull the trigger on that one. We need to learn about what the investment playing field even looks like, and how can we analyze each one of these investments to find out whether it's a good fit or a bad fit for our portfolio. The right place to start is to begin identifying boundaries for your own portfolio. Let's say you don't want to invest in anything that's less than $10,000. And let's say you want to invest into things that you can scale to a maximum of $1 million or $10 million invested into that one specific thing. How does it compare to the other things that are in your portfolio? We need to identify how we want to allocate our risk. And in another video, I'll do a full breakdown of how I allocate my own portfolio. But with each investment, you need to think about what role does this play in relation to the other investments in my portfolio? How many percent of my portfolio should be allocated to this one specific thing? What about this other thing, right? So we need to make sure that it's all balanced out in such a way that if we have a day in the market that everything just gets shaken up, we're still okay because we hedged our risk, we protected ourselves, and we allocated only a small percentage into things that are risky, and we allocated a larger percentage into things that are more reliable and trustworthy and consistent. So that's the first thing. It's setting boundaries in our own portfolio of how we want to structure it, what we want it to look like. Because if we're going into the passive income world, we're going into this investment space without a goal in mind, then where are we going? We're just wandering around and hoping that things work, right? We want to make sure that we have a set goal in mind of how we want to allocate our investments, and then we begin developing a process on how we can analyze each investment and how it fits each one of our criteria that we've listed for ourselves. This is one of the most important rules in investing, because as long as we follow those rules and those set guidelines that we've created for ourselves, we can build a portfolio that's going to produce year after year after year. And if we have a bad year, we're not totally out of the market. We still have investments that are performing, and we can continue relying on those investments to keep our portfolio healthy and strong. The second letter is I. L and then I. I is implementing. Now that we've learned about all these different things that happen in the investment world, we've learned about how we can allocate investments into our portfolio, what percentage we want to put into each one. Now we need to actually implement. So when an investment comes our way, we've developed a way to analyze that investment and discover whether it's a good one or not a good one. And then we place it into our portfolio. That's implementation. With implementation, sometimes you need somebody to guide you along that path and show you exactly how to implement an investment correctly in order to be profitable with it. There are so many investments out there, and there's no way that any one person could possibly know everything there is to know about every little investment. That's why we put together groups of people who are knowledgeable in their own fields and can tell you, hey, when you're investing into this thing right here, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. This is why it's a good idea. This is why it's a bad idea. We do a full deep dive analysis on each one of these industries so that we can understand what is the best way to implement this investment. What is the best way to add it into our portfolio that we've created boundaries for to make sure that it fits into our little slots that we've created, and it's not over leveraging us, and it's balancing our portfolio in such a way that it's going to be long-term profitable. The name of the game is you want to be the last man standing no matter what. If the market tanks tomorrow, is your portfolio still going to be alive, right? We want to make sure that we're always the last man standing in the market, no matter what we're investing in. It's not about who makes the most money per year. It's about who's the last man standing when we have a black swan event or another pandemic or a market crash or a recession. Because if you're making 500% a year, 4, 5, 6 years in a row, and then we have a recession and you lose all of that, well, you didn't really make anything. However, if you're targeting more moderate gains, you're doing maybe 20, 30, 40, maybe 100 or even 200% a year if you're really good, but you're consistent and you're managing your risk correctly, and you're still standing when that market crashes. When that recession hits, you're still fine. You're not over leveraged, right? Because we balanced our portfolio. We implemented what we learned correctly. And that brings me to my next letter is P. It's perfecting. So with perfecting, now that we've created boundaries, now that we've set up exactly the system that we want to work for us, we began implementing it by bringing in investments. We pull this investment and that investment and this investment. We just start building out a portfolio for ourselves. The next step is perfecting, because as we begin investing into these things, we may have hired a mentor or somebody to guide us along the way, and they've probably given us some solid advice. They've probably showed us exactly how to implement this investment correctly. However, there's nothing like personal experience. As you're going through this investment journey, you're going to learn your own little secrets along the way on like, okay, I actually prefer to do this investment this way, or I prefer to do it that way. And actually, if I tweak these things right over here, I'm going to be more profitable. I make 20% more profit when I do these little things, right? We make little adjustments along the way as we progress with our investment that allows us to be more profitable year after year after year. The goal is to increase our profitability, because if we're not increasing our profitability, we're losing money. It might not seem like that, but if you think about it, let's say your investment portfolio produces $1 million per year. You think you're cool, you're making $1 million a year, right? And it's just consistent, $1 million this year, $1 million next year, and next year, and next year. But we fail to think about inflation, right? If inflation was 8% like it was the last 2 years, that means technically both of those years you lost 8% of your portfolio just because it didn't grow by at least 8%, right? So if you want to make the same amount, you have to make at least 8% more in order to keep up with inflation. But we're not here to keep up with inflation. We're here to outpace inflation. So make sure your investment portfolio is growing year after year after year, and definitely growing at a faster rate than inflation is trying to eat away at it. You want to make sure that your portfolio is perfected every single year, where you make little tweaks and adjustments, because the market changes. The market dynamics change, and just because this investment was profitable this year, or maybe it was the most profitable this year, it doesn't mean it's going to be the most profitable next year. And that means that maybe we need to make some perfections or some adjustments to our portfolio to maybe reallocate some assets and reallocate some capital to an investment that's going to perform even better this year. So perfection is really, really an important aspect to all of this. And that finally brings me to my last letter, S. It's scaling. This is probably the most important step out of all of these, because if we forget to scale, we never really build generational wealth. Generational wealth is not built by keeping your portfolio the same size. This is how scaling works. Let's say you try an investment out. I very, very rarely go all in on an investment unless I'm super, super confident that it's going to work out. And however, I still manage my risk, right? Because I built out my portfolio in such a way where just a small amount is allocated to that one investment. But let's say I find an investment and I invest $50,000 into it. I invest 50K. If it produces for me, right? That's one of the things that I look for, is I want this investment to produce for me consistently, so it's repeatable and it's scalable. And if it's scalable, that means that it produced for me 1 year, maybe I'll put 100,000 in the next year, and then 200,000, and then 500,000, right? I want to scale that investment year after year after year, because to our last point, we want to outpace inflation. And the only way to outpace inflation is to scale. And it doesn't matter how you scale. You could start a fund and start investing into these things. You could access business loans or business credit, depending on what the investment is, and you can start investing into those things. Maybe you're just buying office equipment, or maybe you're buying commercial real estate, right? Those things can be scaled through lenders and funding and all those different programs. So it's really, really important that once we've perfected our system, once we've perfected our passive income engine, we scale it to the next level. Year after year after year, our portfolio should be scaling. And once we've scaled it to a level where we feel like we're comfortable with the income that's coming in, we can begin spending some of that passive income. This is the fun part. This is what everybody wants to get to. But you can't get to the fun part unless you follow those 4 steps. Unless you follow LIPS, you can't get to the fun part where you're using your passive income for fun things. I never use my active income for fun things, maybe like a fun car or a trip, a vacation, maybe a watch, things that I want. and things that I don't actually need for everyday life, I never spend my active income on it. I only spend my passive income on those things. And that's one thing that's helped me maintain my lifestyle, even if my portfolio is maybe not doing so hot this year. Maybe we had a recession, or maybe we had a pandemic. And it allowed me to limit what I'm doing with my income to where my active income is always being reinvested into more passive income opportunities. And that causes that scaling effect to happen. My passive income is growing year after year after year. And once my passive income gets to a level where I'm comfortable, I begin spending that on things that I want to. Of course, my first priority is still to reinvest my passive income into more passive income opportunities. But sometimes it's not a bad idea to enjoy that money as well, because after all, what's all that money worth if we're not using it for the things that we love? All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you all on the next video.